Greetings, class. This is Dr. York-Hammons. We are still in Chapter 8, Section 2, Testing the Differences in Population Means. In this section, we're using a t-test because we do not know the population standard deviation for either of the two samples that we were working with. So I'm looking at number 10 from page 432. We were given, it says to assume that the samples are random and independent and the populations are normally distributed. So we have the conditions that we need in order to do the t-test statistic in StatCrunch to determine whether to test the claim. Now, in this case, it says the claim is that mu1 is less than mu2. So that actually is our alternative hypothesis because this does not have an equality symbol in it. So as a result, the complement of less than, greater than or equal to, will be our null hypothesis. So here we have our null hypothesis, mu1 greater than equal to mu2. mu1 greater than or equal to mu2, and our alternative hypothesis that mu1 is less than mu2, which is our claim. Now, I need to remind you that in StatCrunch, they're not going to leave it in this form. They're actually going to do the subtraction. So mu1 greater than or equal to mu2 means that their difference has to be greater than or equal to 0. And for the alternative hypothesis, mu1 less than mu2, if we subtract mu2 from each side, we get mu1 minus mu2 less than 0. So this is what it's going to look like in StatCrunch with the exception of this symbol, but we'll be able to pick the symbol we want for the difference, for the alternative hypothesis. So it says assume that the variance for the first sample is equal to the variance for the second sample. Now, when that happens, remember that means that we pool our variances, and I'm going to show you when we run the t-test how you do that. So in stat, this time you go to t-stats. It is to sample, and we do have summary. They didn't give us a column of data. They gave us the values to type in. So for sample 1, the mean x bar sub 1 is 0.345. The sample standard deviation. Now you notice this time it uses the word sample, whereas in section 1 we didn't see the word sample. So they're being very specific that they want the sample standard deviation 0.305, and sample 1 has 11 members in the sample. For sample 2, the sample mean is 0.515. The sample standard deviation, S sub 2, is 0.215. And the sample size for the second sample is 9. Now, since we are to assume that the variances are equal, you must check. I'm unchecking it so you can see that if it's blank, if they're equal, if the variance from sample 1 is equal to the variance of sample 2, then you must check pool variance. So that will be pooled for this problem. Now we're doing a hypothesis test, and remember I told you that they would do the subtraction, and we can't change this equality here in StatCrunch, but we can change it for H sub A, which we need it to be less than. So do the drop-down list and select less than 0, and click compute. And I'm going to remove this table. Oh, it looks like I didn't put them in my table, so I better look at this table. And I'm going. They do give us a t statistic. That is our standardized. This is a standardized test statistic that you get from running the t-stat. But this is the number we need to look at right here. I'm just going to do a Control-C to copy it and put it over here and remind ourselves if the p-value is less than alpha, then we reject H sub O. If not, fail to reject H sub O. And it looks like I might need to make this print. I thought I had it set at a little higher value there, but let's make it a little bit bigger and see if we can. There we go. So let's look at those p-values. Our p-value, I'm just going to put Control C, oops, sorry, Control V. So you have to ask yourself, is 0.082 less than our alpha value, which is 0.10 that was given to us at the beginning of the problem. So if you ask yourself, is 0.0882 less than 0.01, the answer is yes. So we reject H sub O. Now, if we reject H sub O, that means we have evidence to support H sub A, which is our claim. So your interpretation would be, we have evidence at the, and 0.10 for alpha would be the 10% level of significance to support the claim. Again, alpha was 0.10, which translates to 10% level of significance. And that was done by running a 2-sample t-test. Now we're going to do number 11. It's at the bottom of this page, and I'm going to get it set up for us and come right back to it. So we're still in Chapter 8, Section 2 on page 432 of your textbook, and I'd like to look at number 12, mainly because the claim about the variances for each sample are not equal this time, so it's worked a little bit differently. So let's just read through this. It says the claim is that mu1 is greater than mu2. So the population mean for the first sample is greater than the population mean for the second. Now, since that is not an equality symbol, then that means that our claim is H sub A, that mu1 is greater than mu2. The complement of greater than is less than or equal to. So that would be our null hypothesis, that mu1 would be less than or equal to mu2. Reminder, though, that StatCrunch uses the differences. So if I were to take mu1 and subtract mu2, that would say it would be less than or equal to 0. Similarly, for the alternative hypothesis in StatCrunch, you're going to see mu1 minus mu2. And in this case, it's greater than 0 because our inequality is greater than. Now we have our sample statistics. They give us the mean, the sample deviation, and the sample size for each sample, but then they tell us that the variances are not equal. Now remember in problem number 10, where the variances were equal, we had to check the pool variances box in StatCrunch. So let's go back to StatCrunch. We're still running a t-test because we do not know the population standard deviation. We only know the sample standard deviation. So I go to Stat, I go to t-stats, to sample with summary. Now for sample 1, I need the mean, the sample standard deviation, and the sample size. So I do 52, 4.8, and 32. Those are the three values for sample 1, mean, sample standard deviation, and sample size. Now for sample 2, the sample mean is 50. The sample standard deviation is 1.2. And the sample size for sample 2 is 40. They gave you N2 equal 40. Now, here's the difference, and this is important, because the variance for sample 1 is not equal to the variance for sample 2, I do not click the pool variances. So StatCrunch knows that they will use this smaller sample size of 32 and do subtract 1 to get 31 degrees of freedom. It's going to go ahead and calculate that information for you. But you do have to tell it that the difference, mu1 minus mu2, is greater than 0. We can't change this equal here, but I can change my alternative hypothesis to be greater than, which is what we see in the claim here for the, that's actually our alternative hypothesis. So let's, this time I'm actually going to store it in the data table. It's easier for me to look at it there. So I'm going to click compute and I'll close that window. Now we do have a standardized t-statistic and we have a p-value. I'm simply going to look at this p-value, and you have to ask yourself, is the p-value less than alpha? If yes, we reject H sub O. Well, so let's look at that p-value. Our p-value from, I can actually do a Control-C and a Control-V. Ooh, I don't need all those spaces. I just need, that was a 138, so I can change that 13 to a 014. And I have to ask myself, is that less than my alpha 0.01? And the answer is no, so we fail to reject H sub O. Now, if you fail to reject H sub O and your claim is H sub A, then you would have to say we do not have enough evidence at the, now look at alpha, alpha 0.01, change that to a percent, that would be 1% level of significance to support the claim. So we don't have enough evidence. We didn't reject, we failed to reject H sub O, so there's no evidence to support H sub A. The only way you have evidence to support H sub A is if you reject H sub O, and we did not. So that would be your interpretation for number 12. I still need to do one more problem where the data isn't given to you the way you just need to straight type it into StatCrunch. And so I'm going to do one more video for Chapter 8, Section 2, and I'll have that uploaded soon.